I installed one security camera outside my house, and somehow Karen treated it like a national surveillance operation. It started after a package disappeared from my porch. Nothing expensive, just annoying. 1 minute it was there. Next minute, gone. And since I enjoy knowing whether my belongings are being stolen by criminals or raccoons, I bought a security camera. Simple setup. One camera above the garage, facing my driveway, my property. Very normal. Millions of people have them. But unfortunately for me, Karen noticed it within 24 hours. I was adjusting the camera angle on a ladder when I heard the voice. Absolutely not. I looked down. Karen stood in my driveway, staring upward like she'd discovered hidden government equipment. "Hey, Karen," I said. She ignored the greeting completely. "Is that recording device active?" "Recording device. Lady, it's a Ring camera, not a spy satellite." "Yes," I replied. Her eyes narrowed immediately. I knew it. Knew what? That Best Buy exists? Karen crossed her arms. "You are invading neighborhood privacy." Privacy. The camera faced my driveway. Unless her hobbies included crawling through my bushes, she had nothing to worry about. "It only records my property," I explained. Karen pointed dramatically upward. "Cameras see farther than people think. Very deep, very paranoid, very Karen." She stepped back and squinted at the camera like she was analyzing military technology. "How long has this been recording?" she asked. "About 20 minutes. She gasped. "Without notifying residents?" Residents. Like she expected a press conference. I tried not to laugh. "It's a security camera." Karen shook her head slowly and said, "No, it's surveillance." Then she did something incredible. She started waving her arms in front of the driveway, back and forth, slowly, like she was testing laser sensors in an action movie. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm determining the range." "The range of a $90 camera." Then she leaned closer and pointed upward. "Can it hear conversations?" I paused. "Karen, are you planning crimes?" Karen ignored the question. Instead, she stepped closer and delivered her dramatic one-liner. "If you continue recording this neighborhood, I will escalate the situation." Escalate over a security camera. At this point, I was honestly impressed by her commitment. "It records motion near my driveway," I explained. She shook her head. "That's how it starts." Starts? Starts? What did she think I was building? For the next few days. Karen became obsessed with the camera. I caught her staring at it constantly, walking past slowly, wearing sunglasses for some reason. One afternoon, she actually walked onto my lawn and tried to look behind it, like the real camera was hidden somewhere else. My neighbor Dave watched from across the street and whispered, "She thinks you're spying on her." I sighed. She's not interesting enough to spy on. Then came Saturday. I was washing my truck when Karen marched across the street holding papers. Always dangerous. "I have researched surveillance laws," she announced dramatically. Oh no, internet research. Karen had arrived. She waved printed pages in the air. "You cannot record people without consent." I glanced at the papers. First result, a random Facebook screenshot. Powerful legal evidence. Karen pointed toward the camera and said, "That device has probably documented private resident activity for days." Private activity? The only thing it had recorded so far was me getting mail, Dave dropping a burger, a squirrel fighting a flower pot, very sensitive material. Then Karen delivered the line. "I feel monitored." Monitored. By a driveway camera. And then, right on schedule, a patrol car arrived. Of course. because Karen had escalated again. The officer stepped out looking confused already and said, "Sir, we received a complaint regarding illegal surveillance." Illegal surveillance. I looked at my tiny camera, then back at the officer. "You mean that?" He nodded slowly. Behind him, Karen stood proudly with her arms crossed like she had just stopped organized crime. The officer stared at the camera. Small device, mounted above my garage, facing directly toward my driveway. Completely normal. He turned to me. "Sir, does this camera point into anyone else's home?" "No." "Does it record public areas?" "Mostly my driveway and the sidewalk." He nodded calmly, then turned toward Karen, and that's when the performance resumed. Karen stepped forward dramatically and said, "Officer, this device has been observing residents without authorization." Observing residents. Again, this was a driveway camera, not the CIA. She pointed upward. That thing could be collecting personal behavioral data. Behavioral data. The only behavior it had captured was Dave scratching his stomach while checking the mail. The officer blinked slowly. "Ma'am, it's a home security camera." Karen shook her head immediately. "That's what they all say." "They?" The officer asked me if he could look at the footage. Sure. I opened the app on my phone, and honestly, the clips were incredible. Me taking out trash, a cat sleeping under my truck, Dave dropping hot dogs during a barbecue. Then one particular clip appeared. Karen standing in front of the camera, staring directly into it for almost 3 straight minutes. The officer looked at the screen, then at Karen, then back at the screen. I could physically see him trying not to laugh. That footage was obtained without informed consent. The officer paused. "Ma'am, you walked directly onto his property." Karen froze for half a second, then recovered instantly. "I was conducting an observational assessment." Observational assessment. "Lady, you were peeking behind my flower pot." The officer finally sighed. "Sir, you are allowed to have security cameras on your property." Boom. Karen crossed her arms. "But I feel watched." The officer gave the most devastating response possible. "Then don't stand in front of the camera." Direct hit. Critical damage. That should have ended it. But Karen had one final evolution left. HOA mode. 3 days later, the violation notice arrived. Unauthorized surveillance equipment. Privacy disruption concerns. Community discomfort. Community discomfort. The camera made people uncomfortable. You know what else makes people uncomfortable? Theft. Karen began warning neighbors about me. Seriously. I overheard her telling one woman, "He probably records everything." Everything. The camera battery barely lasted 4 days. Then she started avoiding my driveway completely, walking dramatically across the street whenever she passed my house, like the camera emitted radiation. One afternoon, I even caught her wearing a hoodie and sunglasses to walk her mailbox. At noon, the meeting room was packed. Neighbors showed up because apparently camera drama was now community entertainment. Board members sat at the front already exhausted. Karen sat proudly beside a stack of printed screenshots. Screenshots. From my driveway. The HOA president began. "We are here regarding complaints about surveillance concerns." Karen stood immediately. Of course she did. And said, "This resident has created an atmosphere of constant observation." Constant observation. By one camera, she continued. "Residents no longer feel free to exist naturally." Naturally? One board member asked carefully. "What exactly was recorded?" Karen paused. Movement. Movement. A truly devastating crime. I stood calmly. The camera faces my property, I explained. It's legal. It records motion near my driveway. Then I pulled out my phone. Actually, I added, the camera did capture something interesting. Karen's confidence disappeared instantly. Beautiful moment. I played the video. The room watched silently. There was Karen, walking onto my lawn, looking around suspiciously, trying to inspect the camera, then attempting to cover it with a grocery bag. The room exploded. People laughed immediately. One board member physically removed his glasses. Karen looked horrified. "I was protecting community privacy," she shouted, "by trespassing with produce packaging." The president leaned forward slowly. "Ma'am, did you attempt to tamper with his property?" Karen panicked. "I was preventing unauthorized surveillance," one board member interrupted. "With a grocery bag." Silence. Absolute silence. "The complaint is dismissed," the president announced, "and residents are permitted to use lawful security devices." Then came the finishing blow. "And tampering with another resident's property is unacceptable." Karen.exe stopped responding. A week later, the camera was still there, still recording peacefully, still protecting my driveway. And every single time Karen walked past my house, she avoided looking at it, which honestly made the footage even funnier. Because in the end, the only suspicious thing my camera ever captured was Karen.